You think you know fear? Try standing in a bank lobby at 3 a.m. when men with rifles storm the place, and you're the only thing standing between them and a massacre. This isn't Hollywood. This isn't a movie. This is my story. Emily Parker. I'm a SWAT officer, a mother, and the victim of one of the most brutal robberies our city has ever seen. If you'd like to hear the stories of retired SWAT officers, subscribe to our channel and like the videos. It means a lot to us. Names and organizations are not real names to avoid getting us into trouble. It was a freezing winter night. The city streets were empty, the kind of silence that almost makes you forget how quickly chaos can erupt. I was halfway through my night shift coffee when the call came in. Bank robbery in progress. Armed suspects. Possible hostages. My heart skipped. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew what that meant. Innocent lives on the line. Split-second decisions. No room for error. By the time my team and I pulled up, the red and blue flash of police cruisers had already painted the walls of the old downtown bank. Officers had set up a perimeter, but no one dared to move in. You could see shadows pacing behind the glass doors, weapons glinting in the fluorescent lights inside. The leader of the crew, a cartel enforcer named Marco El Tiger Vargas. He wasn't robbing the bank for money. No, this was about power, a message, and I was about to walk straight into his game. I adjusted my vest, gripped my rifle, and looked at my partner John, the steady rock in every storm. He gave me a nod, no words needed. That's how SWAT works. Trust, timing, precision. Emily, you're on point, the commander said through comms. I inhaled slowly, the weight of the moment pressing down, then whispered back, Roger, going in. The moment those heavy glass doors swung open, it hit me, the stench of fear. You can smell it. It's sharp, it's heavy, it clings to your skin. Inside, a dozen hostages sat on the marble floor, hands on their heads, eyes wide like cornered animals. A little boy clung to his mother's coat, his tiny shoulders shaking. And then there he was, Marco Vargas. Tall, broad eyes like ice. He wasn't wearing a mask. That told me everything. This wasn't just a robbery. He didn't care about hiding. He wanted his face burned into everyone's memory, a declaration. I own this city. He paced slowly across the lobby, shotgun in hand, barking orders in Spanish to his men. 4 of them, all wired, twitchy, the kind of guys who've lived too long on drugs and adrenaline. Trigger fingers, itching, get down. One of them screamed, waving his AK toward me. I didn't flinch. You can't. If they smell fear, they win. Instead, I leveled my eyes at Vargas and said, calm but firm, this is over. Let those people go, and we can talk. For a moment, silence, just the hum of the bank's old lights. Then Vargas laughed low, dark, like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. You must be Parker, he said, accent thick but words sharp. I heard about you, the blonde SWAT angel who thinks she can scare wolves. He wanted to get under my skin. That's what men like him do. Make you doubt yourself, make you hesitate. But I didn't blink. Behind me, John whispered through comms. We've got snipers outside. Emily, just say the word. But I couldn't, not yet. Not with those hostages so close. So I played his game. Marco, I said, lowering my rifle just enough to look like I was willing to listen. You're boxed in. There's no way out. You know it, and I know it. But if you put that gun down, I can make sure you walk out of here alive. His eyes narrowed. He tilted his head, studying me. Then, without warning, he grabbed a young banker by the collar, shoved the barrel of his shotgun under the man's chin, and shouted, alive. Ha, I don't care about alive. I care about respect. The banker's knees buckled. His lips trembled. He looked at me, begging silently. That's the moment your training either saves you or breaks you. Every second stretched into an eternity. My finger itched on the trigger, but one wrong move would mean blood on the marble floor. So I spoke not to Vargas, but to the hostages. My voice steady, firm, like I was pulling them into my protection. Stay calm. Nobody's going to die tonight. Not if I have a say. The hostages looked at me somehow. Just my words, my tone, gave them a spark of hope. And that's the thing. Hope is stronger than fear, even in the darkest places. Vargas saw it too. His jaw tightened. He didn't like losing control of the room. That's when I realized this wasn't just about tactics or guns. This was psychological warfare, and I was ready to fight it. Time slowed to a crawl. Every sound was amplified. The ticking of the bank's clock, the shuffle of a hostage's shoe on the polished floor, the metallic click of Vargas's shotgun as he pressed it harder under that poor banker's chin. I locked eyes with Vargas, and in that instant, it wasn't SWAT against cartel, it was predator against predator. He wanted chaos. He wanted to watch us unravel. But I had learned long ago, chaos only has power if you let it in. Through my coms, John's voice came again. Low and urgent. Emily, we've got a shot. Sniper's got his sights locked. Just nod, and it's done. I could have ended it right there. One nod, one trigger pull, and Vargas would hit the ground before he even knew he was dead. But the hostages were too close. And Vargas wasn't the type to die quietly. If he felt the squeeze of death coming, he'd fire first, maybe take 2, 3 innocents with him. So I shook my head, almost imperceptibly. Not yet, I whispered. Instead, I took a step forward. Risky, maybe suicidal, but sometimes the only way to save lives is to gamble with your own. Marco, I said, my voice steady as bedrock. You think fear keeps you in control, but look around. I gestured toward the hostages. They don't fear you, not anymore. They see me, and they see that you're already losing. His eyes flicked toward them, just for a second. That's all I needed. Breach, breach, breach. John's voice erupted in my earpiece. The world exploded. The side wall of the bank shattered inward as a flashbang detonated. White light swallowed the room, followed by a deafening crack that rattled the very bones in my chest. Hostages screamed. Vargas roared. His men swung their rifles wildly, firing in panic. Training kicked in. My rifle was up, sights locked. First man, second tried to flank left down. Everything was chaos. Smoke, shouting, the hiss of suppressive fire. My team stormed in from the breach point, black shadows moving like predators in the strobing light. But Vargas was different. He didn't run, didn't surrender. Instead, he dragged the banker in front of him like a shield and fired a blast from his shotgun. Marble exploded into shrapnel inches from my face. I ducked, heart hammering, ears ringing. He screamed over the noise. You won't take me alive, Parker. I surged forward, training, instinct, rage, all of it's fused into one. I couldn't let him win. Not here, not tonight. Our eyes locked one last time across that smoky, blood-stained lobby. This was the breaking point. The world was a blur of smoke, shouting, and gunfire. But in the middle of all that chaos, there was only one thing I could see, clearly: Marco Vargas, the cartel enforcer they called El Tiger. He had the banker locked in front of him, one massive arm wrapped around the man's throat, the other hand steadying that sawed-off shotgun. The banker's eyes were wide, bulging with terror, pleading silently with me. Please, don't let me die here. I raised my rifle, but the angle was bad. If I fired and missed by even an inch, the hostage wouldn't survive. My finger tightened on the trigger, but I didn't pull. Not yet. Drop the gun, Vargas, I shouted, my voice cutting through the chaos like steel. It's over. He barked out a laugh, deep and guttural, the kind that comes from a man who's danced with death more times than he can count. You think this is over, Parker? No, this is just the beginning. His accent was thick, his voice steady despite the pandemonium. That's how I knew he was dangerous. A desperate man is sloppy. Vargas wasn't sloppy. He was calm. Behind me, I could hear John and the rest of my team moving, setting up angles, waiting for an opening. The bank lobby had turned into a war zone, spent casings scattered across the floor, marble columns scarred with bullet impacts, smoke lingering in the air like a ghost refusing to leave. And yet, time slowed again, just me and him, predator and predator. I lowered my rifle slightly, not in surrender, but as a signal. I wanted his eyes on me, only me. Listen to me, Vargas, I said, keeping my tone level, controlled. You walk out now. You live. You keep that gun up, and this room becomes your grave. He sneered, pressing the shotgun harder under the banker's jaw. You talk like you're in control, Parker. But I know your type, always pretending to be stronger than you are. You bleed the same as everyone else. My heart thudded. He was trying to unnerve me, to chip away at my focus. But he underestimated one thing years of training had taught me: how to mask fear, how to use it as fuel instead of weakness. You're right, I admitted. I bleed, I hurt, I'm human. But that's the difference between you and me, Vargas. I fight for something bigger than myself. For the first time, his expression faltered, just for a second, but that was enough. Now, John's voice thundered through comes. A second flashbang went off, blinding white light exploding in the corner of the lobby. Vargas flinched, the banker slipping slightly in his grip, and in that heartbeat of hesitation, I moved. I dropped my rifle, lunged forward, and went for my sidearm. Vargas swung the shotgun wildly, blasting into the ceiling as chunks of plaster rained down. The hostage broke free, stumbling toward safety as John dragged him behind cover. Asterisk, asterisk. And then it was just me and Vargas face to face, close enough to smell the sweat and gunpowder on his skin. He roared, swinging the butt of the shotgun at my head. I ducked, felt the whoosh of air as it missed by inches, and drove my shoulder into his chest. We crashed to the floor, weapons scattering, fists flying. He was bigger, stronger, fueled by rage. Every punch he threw felt like a hammer slamming into my arms, my ribs, my jaw. But I'd been here before, outmatched, outgunned, underestimated. And I'd learned one truth: technique beats power. He pinned me down, his hand around my throat, squeezing, his teeth bared in a feral grin. "This is where you die, Parker," he snarled. Black spots clouded my vision. My lungs screamed for air, but I didn't panic. My hand slid down to the blade strapped on my vest. With every ounce of strength I had left, I drove it upward, burying it into his side. He howled, releasing his grip just enough. I gasped, rolled, and scrambled for my pistol. Vargas staggered to his feet, clutching his bleeding side, rage burning in his eyes. He raised the shotgun one last time, cracked out one shot, straight between his eyes. He hit the floor like a felled giant. The echo of the gunshot hanging in the smoky air. Silence followed. Real silence. Not the tense, heavy kind from before, but the silence of survival. The silence that only comes after death has been beaten back. If only for one night. I lowered my pistol, chest heaving, sweat dripping down my face. Around me, hostages sobbed. Police secured the scene. My team began sweeping for any remaining threats, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. It was over. For now. I holstered my weapon and turned to the hostages. "You're safe," I told them softly. "It's done." And maybe I was trying to convince myself too. The smell of gunpowder clung to me like a second skin. Even hours after Vargas lay dead on the marble floor of that bank, the scent wouldn't wash away. My uniform was torn, my knuckles bloodied, my throat raw from shouting orders and struggling for breath. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that we walked out alive. Most of us, anyway. The hostages were safe. That should have been enough. But in the world I live in, enough is a word that doesn't exist. Because no matter how many lives you save, you can't save them all. And the ghosts of the ones you lose, they never stop following you. We gathered outside the bank as dawn broke, that pale gray light washing over the street. Police tape fluttered in the cold wind. Reporters were already setting up, their cameras pointed straight at us, waiting for a soundbite, a heroic quote. They wanted drama. They wanted a headline. I didn't give them one. I stood there quietly, helmet tucked under my arm, staring at the bloodstains that streaked my gloves. John came up beside me, his face as grim as I'd ever seen it. He offered me a bottle of water, and I took it with a nod. That's the thing about John. He doesn't need words. He knows when silence says more than anything else. "You okay?" he asked finally. I took a long sip, the water cold against my burning throat. "I'll live," I said. And it was true. But it wasn't the whole truth, because deep down, I wasn't okay. None of us were. The thing they don't tell you about SWAT work is that the adrenaline doesn't just stop when the shooting does. It lingers, buzzing under your skin, making it impossible to sit still. And when it finally fades, it leaves a hollow ache in its place, an emptiness you can't shake. Thought that night. When I finally got home, I stood in front of the mirror. My reflection stared back at me, helmet hair, bruised cheek, a smear of blood across my jaw that wasn't even mine. I looked like a ghost of myself. I peeled off the uniform piece by piece, every strap and buckle heavier than the last. By the time I stood there in silence, I felt smaller, almost fragile. The armor was gone, and all that was left was Emily. Not Officer Parker, not SWAT, just Emily. And Emily was tired. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling. I thought about Vargas, the way his eyes burned with hatred until the very last second. The way he said my name like it was a curse. The way his blood spread across that polished marble floor. People like him, they don't disappear. Even in death, they leave scars. Not the kind you can see, but the kind that live inside your head. I could still hear the screams of the hostages, the ringing of the shotgun blast in the confined lobby, the gasping breath as his hands closed around my throat. And even though I had survived, even though I had won, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. But that's the truth, isn't it? Heroes don't always feel like heroes. Sometimes they just feel human. That the phone buzzed on the nightstand, a message from John. Proud of you, partner. Couldn't have done it without you. I smiled faintly. If there's one thing that keeps me going, it's my team. The bond we share, the trust, the unspoken loyalty. It's stronger than fear, stronger than death, because in the end, it isn't about the medals or the headlines. It's about the men and women who stand shoulder to shoulder with you in the darkest nights. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the exhaustion finally take me. Tomorrow, there would be another call, another crisis, another monster wearing a human face. That's the life I chose. That's the life I'll keep living. And maybe that's what scares me most of all. You think a bank robbery is just a story on the evening news. For me, it was blood, sweat, and choices that haunt me still. My name is Emily Parker, SWAT officer. And this was the night I learned that survival doesn't always feel like victory. Asterisk, the echoes of that night still linger in my mind. The metallic clash of rifles, the muffled cries of terrified hostages, the sound of glass shattering against marble floors. It all felt frozen in time. And yet, reality never stops. Every second, no matter how heavy, pulls you forward, forcing choices you can't take back. Inside the bank, silence fell like a thick curtain, but it wasn't the silence of peace. It was that charged stillness, the kind that comes after thunder, when you know the storm hasn't passed, only shifted. My breathing slowed, ears straining against the emptiness, waiting for the next move. I scanned the lobby, its once pristine luxury now twisted into chaos. Scattered papers littered the floor. Chairs lay overturned like fallen soldiers. Broken glass glittered under the dim fluorescent lights. But most haunting were the faces hostages huddled together, wide-eyed, trembling, clinging to each other as if the world could collapse at any second. Their eyes pierced me. Gratitude and trauma blended into one expression I've seen too many times before. They were safe now, but safety doesn't erase memory. Long after we leave, they'll carry the weight of what happened here. That's the part no one talks about, the wounds you can't see. As we moved the hostages toward the safe exit, a faint groan stopped me in my tracks. It was soft, almost lost in the static of the radios, but enough to cut through the tension. I turned and spotted one of the robbers on the ground. His mask had slipped, revealing half of his face. He wasn't what I expected. He was young, shockingly young, barely more than a teenager. Blood soaked through his jacket, pooling beneath him. He looked up, his eyes locking with mine, and for the first time all night, I didn't see rage in them. I saw fear, regret, humanity. I didn't want this, he whispered, his voice barely audible. For a moment, my chest tightened. Behind the weapon, behind the chaos, he was just a kid who had chosen the wrong path, or maybe had no path at all. This is the cruel paradox of my job. Sometimes the enemy looks more like a lost child than a hardened criminal. The radio crackled. Emily, report. Are all civilians secured? I pressed my earpiece. Hostages are safe. 2 suspects neutralized. 1 critical. The words felt clinical, detached because they had to, but inside, I was anything but detached. My mind raced, my heart heavy, because I knew tonight wouldn't end when the gunfire stopped. It never does. Outside, cold, midnight air rushed against my face as we stepped into flashing red and blue lights. Crowds pressed against barricades. Journalists raised cameras. Sirens wailed like an orchestra of chaos. And everyone wanted the same thing, an explanation. But how do you explain something like this? How do you reduce terror, desperation, and split-second life or death decisions into a headline? You don't. You can't. As I guided a trembling mother and her child to safety, she stopped me. Tears streaked down her cheeks, her voice breaking. You saved us. I don't know how to thank you. I gave her a nod, forcing a small smile, because moments like that, human fragile, why we put our lives on the line, those seconds of relief, of reunion, are worth every scar we carry. But even as I tried to absorb that, the night wasn't done with me. One of my teammates approached, his expression grim. Emily, you need to see this. He handed me a file, one of several pulled from the bank's vault. They weren't filled with money. They weren't even valuables. They were documents detailed, precise, dangerous, transfers, names, numbers, ledgers that didn't just tell the story of a robbery, but of a network, a cartel. This wasn't just a heist, he said. This was a front, a financial hub, and these papers, they could bring the whole operation down. My pulse quickened. Suddenly, everything made sense. The violence, the desperation, the chaos. It wasn't about cash. It was about protection. The robbers weren't stealing. They were covering tracks, and we had stumbled straight into the heart of something far bigger than we realized. I stood there, the night pressing in on me, red and blue lights painting the pavement at my feet. For a moment, I felt the weight of the storm about to break. Asterisk. Because I knew this wasn't an ending. It was the opening act. The cartel wouldn't let this go unanswered. Those papers were a spark in a powder keg, and somehow, I had become the one holding the match. I inhaled deeply, letting the cold air bite my lungs. And in that moment, I understood this wasn't just about a bank. It was about a war I never intended to start. And that was just one night, one mission, one story among countless others that never make the headlines. The truth is, what you just heard barely scratches the surface of what really happens behind those flashing red and blue lights. But every operation leaves a trail. Every decision carries a price. And if you think tonight's bank heist was intense, trust me, what comes next will shake you even more. So, if you want to step inside the world most people only see in movies, if you want to feel the adrenaline, the danger, the impossible choices, then don't just leave now. Stick with us. You think you know fear? Try standing in a bank lobby at 3 a.m. when men with rifles storm the place, and you're the only thing standing between them and a massacre. Asterisk, asterisk,